So, did Jesus break the Sabbath? Yes, and the following scriptures are witness to this fact, starting with the Gospel of John, where Jesus himself proclaimed that he was working on the Sabbath, and the Apostle John agreed, saying that Jesus was breaking the Sabbath. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 12, where Jesus says his followers break the Sabbath yet are innocent. But first, note that throughout the Gospel of John, Jesus repeatedly claims to be the Messiah, that is, the prophet God had foretold Moses about back in Deuteronomy 18. Verse 18, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their fellow Israelites, and I will put my words in his mouth. He will tell them everything I command him. I myself will call to account anyone who does not listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name. Note that this prophet was to be like Moses and not a repeat Moses. The prophecy explains why Jesus in John chapter 5, verse 17, doubles down on the Jewish charge of breaking the Sabbath by saying, to this very day, that is the Sabbath day in question, my Father is at his work, and I too am working. Again, let's listen, understand, and agree when Jesus says, to this very day, that is the Sabbath day, my Father is at his work, and I too am working. John rightly concludes from this in the following verse, for this reason, that is, working on the Sabbath, the Jews tried all the more to kill Jesus. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. In other words, what John is saying is that Jesus was putting himself on par with God when it came to the law of the Sabbath. The Net Bible on verse 18 notes that in claiming the right to work even as his Father worked, Jesus was claiming a divine prerogative, that is, authority, as the verse goes on to state explicitly for the benefit of the reader who might not have made the connection. This has nothing to do with some metaphysical statement regarding the nature or being of Jesus, let alone God. John's simple yet profound point has to do with Jesus working on the Sabbath, as Jesus himself admits in John 5:17, and as a result, Jesus breaking the Sabbath, as John himself was witness to in John 5, verse 18. Now, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 5, Jesus says his followers, like David and his friends and the temple priests, break the Sabbath and yet are innocent. The expositor's Bible commentary says the disciples' innocence was not established on their being hungry, but on the ground that something greater than the temple was present, a reference to Matthew 12, verse 6. And similar to John chapter 5, Jesus here goes on to say to those Jewish critics, you would not have condemned my innocent disciples if you knew the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices, for the Son of Man is Lord, even over the Sabbath. This means Jesus, the Messiah, the prophet greater than Moses, has now been given the unique authority to be master over the Sabbath. Again, just as Jesus is greater than the temple itself, Matthew 12, verse 6, Jesus is greater than Solomon, according to Matthew 12, verse 42, and Jesus is even greater now than Moses himself, according to Hebrews 3, verse 3. So then, Jesus is now made greater than the Sabbath day. Similar to the followers of Jesus breaking the Sabbath, yet are innocent, so was Jesus completely innocent of any law breaking. Let me be clear. Jesus himself never sinned. He was not a sinner. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5:21, Christ was without sin. Likewise, Peter says Christ did not sin or ever tell a lie in 1 Peter 2, verse 22. Yet the Gospels present Jesus and his followers operating under a different law, part of a different covenant, as foretold by Old Testament prophets like Jeremiah. In other words, they were not lawbreakers, sinners, because they were not operating according to that Old Covenant law of Moses. And unlike the law of Moses, the law of Christ now offered the freedom to either rest or work on any given Saturday, that is, the Jewish Sabbath day. As the prophet foretold by Deuteronomy 18, Jesus was also the mediator of a new law, for he is the one who mediates for us a far better covenant with God based on better promises, according to Hebrews 8, verse 6. For when the priesthood is changed, of necessity also a change in the law must take place, according to Hebrews 7, verse 12. On this verse, the IVP New Testament commentary says that the Hebrews writer's argument is that if the priesthood of Jesus has now replaced that of Levi, then the law of Moses must also be replaced because it is the natural accompaniment of the Levitical priesthood. Sacrifices and offerings would no longer be useful for covering sins, and the law which awakened sin must pass as well. It's a powerful declaration which would arouse immediate antagonism among certain Jews, as indeed history has shown. He further indicates Jesus' priesthood as being different from the Aaronic in that those priests all belonged to the tribe of Levi, while Jesus came from the tribe of Judah. Since Moses said nothing about that tribe serving as priests, it is plain that the present priesthood of Jesus does not rest on Moses or his law. Old Testament prophets, like Jeremiah, had already foretold that this new law, along with the new covenant it represents, would not be the same as the one God had made at Sinai, according to Jeremiah 31, verse 32. This is why now, for the New Testament writers, Jesus was found worthy of greater honor than Moses, Hebrews 3, verse 3. And just as God made Jesus high priest from the womb, according to Psalm 110, which means not by a law of physical descent, that is, the law of Moses, according to Hebrews 7 and 8, likewise, God made Jesus the Messiah from the womb, according to Luke 2, verse 11, which means Jesus is Israel's new lawgiver, king. To summarize, the New Covenant or New Testament Christianity is based on the teaching and practice of Jesus. But if Jesus continued to observe the Old Covenant law he was born and raised under, like keeping the Sabbath, then Christ is useless to you, as Paul later warns in Galatians 5. Because if any Christian tries to be made right by the law of Moses and not by the law of Jesus, you automatically cut yourself off from Christ. And as a result, you have put yourself outside the grace of God. Instead, Christians are now under the law of Messiah and not the law of Moses. Paul, a former zealous Torah keeping Pharisee himself, was the first to fully understand the new system brought about by the Messiah when he says in 1 Corinthians 9, to the Jews I became like a Jew to win Jews, to those under the law, like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, to win those under the law, to those who are without the law, like one without the law, though I, that is Paul, am not without the law of God, but under the law of Christ to win those without the law. Note that for Paul, the law of Moses is not the same as the law of Messiah, which now is identified as the law of God itself. So I'll leave you with this final thought. If Jesus kept the Sabbath, it would have meant that Jesus was operating under the law of Moses. That is, Jesus was under the authority of Moses, which would by default have made Moses greater than Jesus. May that never be the case. Thank you.